You trusted them, you believed in them, and they let you fall. Not once, maybe twice, maybe 100 times. The betrayal burns. The disappointment cuts deep. And now you stand at a crossroads, become bitter and broken, or become something harder, something unshakable. This isn't about forgiveness. This isn't about letting go. This is about building a foundation so solid that when people crumble around you, you remain standing. The men who survive disappointment don't hope for better people. They become better men, and that transformation starts right now. Before stepping into this powerful training session, subscribe to Stoic Audiobooks so you never miss Stoic blueprints. Chapter 1. The wound is still fresh. You can feel it. That moment when someone you trusted, someone you invested in, someone you believed would stand with you, simply walked away. Or worse, they turned on you. The anger rises in your chest. The betrayal replays in your mind like a film you can't stop watching. You wanted to believe they were different. You wanted to believe that loyalty still meant something. That promises held weight. That the people you chose to stand beside would choose to stand beside you. But they didn't. And now you're here, sitting with the wreckage of your expectations, wondering if you're the fool for trusting in the first place, wondering if everyone is just waiting for the right moment to disappoint you, wondering if the problem isn't them, but you for believing people could be better than they are. This is the breaking point. This is where weak men become weaker, building walls so high that nothing good can enter. This is where bitter men are born, carrying resentment like a shield, pushing everyone away before they can get close enough to hurt. This is where broken men stay broken, telling themselves the story that trust is for children and that cynicism is wisdom. But you're not here to become those men. You're here because somewhere deep inside, beneath the anger and the hurt, you know there's another path, a harder path, a path that doesn't require you to become cold or cruel or closed off, a path that transforms disappointment into something that makes you stronger, not smaller. The Stoics understood this better than most. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, surrounded by advisors who flattered him to his face and plotted behind his back, wrote these words. Begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. He wasn't being pessimistic. He was being prepared. He understood that disappointment isn't an exception to life. It's a fundamental part of it. And the men who thrive aren't the ones who avoid it. They're the ones who expect it, prepare for it, and use it as fuel. When someone disappoints you, the first casualty is your illusion. The illusion that this person was who you thought they were. The illusion that your relationship was what you believed it to be. The illusion that loyalty, integrity, and honor are common currencies everyone trades in. These illusions feel comfortable. They feel safe. And when they shatter, the pain isn't just about what happened. It's about realizing you were living in a story that wasn't true. But here's what most men miss. The shattering of an illusion is a gift, a brutal, painful, necessary gift, because every illusion you carry makes you vulnerable. Every false belief about who someone is or what they're capable of leaves you exposed. The man who sees clearly, who knows exactly what he's dealing with, who operates from reality instead of fantasy, cannot be blindsided. He cannot be devastated by what he already anticipated. This doesn't mean becoming paranoid or suspicious. It means becoming clear-eyed. It means understanding that people operate from their own self-interest, their own fears, their own limitations. And when you stop expecting them to be more than they are, you stop being disappointed when they reveal exactly who they've always been. Think about the people who've disappointed you. Really think about them. Were there signs you ignored? Were there moments when they showed you exactly who they were, but you chose to believe they'd change? Were there patterns you made excuses for because you wanted so badly for them to be different? Most of the time, people don't suddenly become disappointing. They reveal what was always there. You just weren't ready to see it. This is the first hard truth. Disappointment is often the price of your own denial. You wanted them to be loyal, so you ignored the times they weren't. You wanted them to be trustworthy, so you excused the small betrayals. You wanted them to be strong, so you overlooked their weakness. And when the final disappointment came, it felt like a surprise, but it wasn't. It was just the moment when you could no longer pretend. Epictetus taught his students that nothing outside your control can harm you. Not truly. People can betray you, abandon you, lie to you, disappoint you. But they cannot touch what matters most: your character, your integrity, your ability to choose how you respond. The disappointment you feel isn't caused by what they did. It's caused by your attachment to who you wanted them to be. Let that sink in. The pain isn't in their action. It's in your expectation. They simply acted according to their nature, their values, their capacity. You expected something different. And the gap between what you expected and what they delivered, that's where the suffering lives. So what do you do with this? How do you stay strong when the people around you keep proving they're weak? You start by letting go of the story that they owe you anything. They don't owe you loyalty. They don't owe you honesty. They don't owe you consistency. These are things you value. These are standards you hold. But you cannot force others to value what you value or hold what you hold sacred. This isn't about lowering your standards. This isn't about accepting mediocrity or betrayal as inevitable. This is about understanding that your strength cannot depend on other people living up to your expectations. Your strength must come from something deeper, something unshakable, something that exists regardless of what anyone else does or doesn't do. When you build your life on the foundation of other people's reliability, you build on sand. When someone fails you, and someone always will, the whole structure collapses. But when you build on your own principles, your own discipline, your own commitment to who you're becoming, no one can take that from you. They can disappoint you. They can leave you. They can betray you. But they cannot destroy what you've built inside yourself. This is where most men get it wrong. They think strength means not feeling the disappointment. They think being stoic means being emotionless, detached, unaffected. But that's not strength. That's numbness. Real strength is feeling the disappointment fully, understanding exactly what it means, and then choosing to move forward anyway. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because you refuse to let someone else's failure define your future. You feel the anger. Let it rise. Don't suppress it. Don't pretend it's not there. The anger is information. It's telling you that a boundary was crossed, that a value was violated, that someone proved themselves unworthy of your trust. Listen to it. Learn from it. And then make a decision about what comes next. Some men stay angry forever. They nurse the grudge, replay the betrayal, build shrines to their disappointment. They tell the story to anyone who'll listen, over and over, keeping the wound fresh. They think this makes them strong, this refusal to forget, this commitment to bitterness. But it doesn't. It makes them prisoners. Every time they tell the story, they're choosing to relive the pain. Every time they think about what was done to them, they're giving that person power they no longer deserve. Other men pretend it didn't happen. They bury the disappointment, slap on a smile, act like everything's fine. They tell themselves they're being mature, being the bigger person, being stoic. But they're not. They're being cowards. Because pretending a wound doesn't exist doesn't heal it. It just lets it fester. And eventually, either it explodes or it kills something inside you. The third path, the path of real strength, is acknowledgement without attachment. Yes, this happened. Yes, it hurt. Yes, they revealed who they truly are. And now, what am I going to do about it? Not to them, for myself. How am I going to use this information to become clearer, stronger, more discerning? How am I going to let this refine me instead of define me? Seneca wrote about this constantly in his letters. He understood that loss, disappointment, and betrayal are teachers if you're willing to learn. Every person who disappoints you is showing you something valuable. Maybe they're showing you that you need better boundaries. Maybe they're showing you that you ignored red flags. Maybe they're showing you that you place too much value on external validation and not enough on internal strength. The lesson is never about them. It's always about you. What did this reveal about where you're still vulnerable, where you're still seeking from others what you should be generating yourself, where you're still hoping people will be different instead of accepting reality as it is? This is uncomfortable work. It's much easier to blame them, to make yourself the victim, to build a narrative where you're blameless and they're monsters. But that narrative, comfortable as it might be, keeps you weak. Because if they have all the power, if you're just a victim of their choices, then you're helpless. You're waiting for them to change, to apologize, to become who you needed them to be. And that wait will destroy you. But when you take full responsibility for your part, when you own your choices, your expectations, your denial, suddenly you have power again. Not power over them, power over yourself. Power to choose differently, power to see clearly, power to walk away from people who prove they don't deserve a place in your life. This is what it means to stay strong when people disappoint you. It means refusing to let their weakness become yours. It means maintaining your standards while releasing your attachment to whether others meet them. It means feeling the full weight of betrayal without letting it crush you. It means learning the lesson without becoming the victim. The blacksmith doesn't curse the metal when it breaks. He notes its weakness, discards what can't be used, and continues working with what remains. You're the blacksmith. The people who disappoint you are the metal that couldn't withstand the heat. Their failure doesn't reflect on your craft. It reveals their composition. And now you know. Now you can choose whether to keep hammering or to set them aside and work with stronger material. Tomorrow you'll wake up. The disappointment will still be there, but so will you. Stronger than yesterday, clearer than before, carrying the weight of what you've learned. This is how men are forged, not in the absence of betrayal, but in the refusal to be broken by it. Chapter 2. You know what makes disappointment so devastating? It's not just that someone let you down. It's that you let yourself down by trusting them. That's the real wound. That's what keeps you up at night. Not what they did, but what you did. You saw the signs. You felt the inconsistency. You noticed the patterns. But you chose to believe anyway. You chose to hope. You chose to give them another chance, and another, and another. And now you're sitting with the consequences of your own choices, wondering why you keep getting burned by the same type of person. Different faces, different names, same story. The friend who disappears when things get hard, the partner who can't commit, the family member who takes but never gives, the colleague who throws you under the bus to save themselves. Same archetype, different costume. This is where most men get stuck. They blame themselves for being too trusting, too naive, too soft. So they build walls. They decide that the solution to disappointment is to stop trusting anyone. Stop investing in anyone. Stop believing anyone will show up. They call this protection. They call this learning. They call this being smart. But it's not. It's just another form of weakness. It's letting disappointment turn you into something smaller, harder, more isolated. The Stoics would tell you that the problem isn't your trust, it's your judgment. There's a difference. Trust is a beautiful thing when it's earned and given wisely. But when you give it freely to everyone, when you ignore evidence that someone isn't worthy of it, when you confuse hope with wisdom, that's not trust. That's foolishness. And foolishness always comes with a price. Marcus Aurelius had to deal with betrayal at the highest levels. His most trusted general, Avidius Cassius, declared himself emperor while Marcus was still alive. A man he'd elevated, honored, and relied upon tried to take everything from him. And when Marcus crushed the rebellion and Cassius was killed, he didn't celebrate. He didn't gloat. He mourned. He understood something most men never grasp. Betrayal says more about the betrayer than the betrayed. But here's what Marcus also understood. He had to continue trusting people. He had to continue delegating authority. He had to continue building relationships, because the alternative, complete isolation and paranoia, would destroy everything he was trying to build. So he didn't stop trusting. He got better at discerning who deserved trust. He observed more carefully. He tested more thoroughly. He gave responsibility incrementally, and watched how people handled it. He didn't close himself off, he sharpened his judgment. This is what you need to learn. The answer to disappointment isn't to stop engaging with people. It's to get better at reading them, to understand human nature, to recognize patterns, to see who people actually are instead of who you want them to be. Every person shows you who they are, not through their words, through their actions, through their consistency, through what they do when it costs them something, through how they behave when no one's watching, through the patterns they repeat over time. Most people will tell you they're loyal, honest, reliable. The question isn't what they say, it's what they prove. You want to know if someone's trustworthy? Watch them in small things first. Do they show up on time? Do they follow through on minor commitments? Do they keep their word on things that don't matter much? If they're unreliable in the small stuff, they'll be unreliable when it counts. If they make excuses for minor failures, they'll make excuses for major betrayals. Character isn't something people turn on and off, it's what they are all the time. You want to know if someone has integrity? Watch what they do when no one's looking. Watch how they treat people who can't do anything for them. Watch how they handle mistakes. Do they take responsibility or deflect blame? Do they own their failures or rationalize them? Do they grow from experience or repeat the same patterns? A man with integrity doesn't need an audience. He holds himself to his standards regardless of who's watching. You want to know if someone's worthy of your time and energy? Watch how they handle adversity. When life gets hard, when things don't go their way, when they face real challenges, what do? Do they stand firm or collapse? Do they blame everyone else or look at themselves? Do they disappear or show up? Crisis doesn't create character. It reveals it. The men who keep disappointing you aren't suddenly becoming disappointing. They're showing you what they've always been. You just weren't paying attention. You were focused on potential instead of reality. You were listening to promises instead of watching actions. You were hoping they'd change instead of accepting they won't. Here's a hard truth you need to internalize. People don't change unless they want to, and most people don't want to. They want the benefits of changing without the work of changing. They want you to believe they're different without actually being different. They'll say all the right things. They'll make all the right promises. And then they'll do exactly what they've always done. Because talk is easy, change is hard, and most people choose easy every single time. This doesn't make them evil. It makes them human. Most people are operating at the limits of their current capacity. They're doing the best they can with who they are right now. The problem isn't that they're deliberately trying to hurt you. The problem is that who they are isn't compatible with what you need. And no amount of hoping, investing, or believing is going to change that. Epictetus taught his students to distinguish between what's in their control and what isn't. You cannot control other people. You cannot make them loyal. You cannot make them honest. You cannot make them strong. You can only control your response to who they are. And your first responsibility is to see clearly, not to see hopefully, not to see optimistically, to see accurately. This requires something most men struggle with: emotional honesty with yourself. It means admitting when you're making excuses for someone. It means acknowledging when you're ignoring red flags. It means recognizing when you're staying in a relationship, friendship, or partnership because it's comfortable, not because it's good for you. How many times have you known something was wrong, but convinced yourself it was fine? How many times have you felt that gut instinct telling you someone wasn't right for you, but rationalized it away? How many times have you seen the pattern, but told yourself this time would be different? That feeling in your gut, that quiet voice that says something's off, that intuition that tells you this person isn't what they appear to be, that's your ancient survival mechanism trying to protect you. Your rational mind can be tricked. Your emotions can be manipulated, but your instinct, honed by millions of years of evolution, knows. It sees the micro-expressions. It reads the energy. It notices the inconsistencies. And it's trying to warn you, but you override it. You tell yourself you're being paranoid. You tell yourself you're being too judgmental. You tell yourself everyone deserves a chance. And maybe they do. But they don't deserve endless chances. They don't deserve your blind faith. They don't deserve access to your life, your resources, your trust while they're actively proving they're unworthy of those things. You need to become ruthless about who gets access to you. Not cruel, not cold, ruthless. There's a difference. Cruelty is causing unnecessary harm. Being cold is shutting everyone out. Being ruthless is simply having high standards and enforcing them consistently. When someone shows you they're unreliable, believe them. Don't give them 17 more chances to prove it. They already proved it. When someone shows you they're selfish, believe them. Don't wait around hoping they'll suddenly become generous. When someone shows you they don't value you, believe them. Don't twist yourself into knots trying to earn their respect. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most of your pain around disappointment isn't from what actually happened. It's from what you thought was going to happen. It's from the future you imagined with this person. It's from the role you assigned them in your life. When they fail to fulfill that role, you mourn the loss of that imagined future. But that future was never real. It was always just a story you told yourself. The faster you can accept reality as it is, not as you wish it to be, the faster you can move forward. This person disappointed you. They showed you who they are. That's not a tragedy. That's information. Now you know. Now you can make informed decisions. Now you can stop investing in something that isn't returning value. Your inner circle should be small, extremely small. Not everyone deserves to be there. Not everyone has earned that level of access. Most people should remain acquaintances, pleasant, polite, but distant. They can be in your life without being in your heart. They can be people you interact with without being people you rely on. Reserve your deep investment for the rare few who prove themselves over time, who show up consistently, who act with integrity when it costs them, who choose loyalty over convenience, who tell you hard truths instead of comfortable lies. These people are rare, but they exist, and when you find them, you'll know, not because they promise loyalty, because they demonstrate it, not because they claim to be there for you, because they show up when everyone else disappears. This is the path forward, not building walls, building discernment, not closing your heart, guarding it wisely, not stopping trust, earning it carefully. You become harder to fool, but easier to impress. You become slower to invest, but more committed when you do. You become someone who sees clearly, chooses wisely, and walks away quickly from people who prove they don't belong in your life. The disappointments of your past weren't failures. They were lessons in human nature. They were training in discernment. They were preparation for the clarity you're building now. Every person who disappointed you taught you something about what to look for and what to avoid. Every betrayal sharpened your ability to recognize character. Every letdown refined your standards. You're not damaged by these experiences. You're educated by them, and that education is preparing you for something better. For relationships built on reality instead of fantasy. For friendships forged through fire instead of convenience. For a life where the people around you aren't just filling space, they're adding value, creating growth, and proving through their actions that they deserve to be there. Chapter 3. The hardest part of disappointment isn't the initial blow. It's the aftermath. It's the questions that plague you in the quiet moments. Did I do something wrong? Was I not enough? Could I have prevented this? Should I give them another chance? The mind becomes a courtroom where you're both the prosecutor and the defendant, endlessly rehashing evidence, searching for meaning in the chaos, trying to make sense of senselessness. Stop. Just stop. You're asking the wrong questions. The question isn't why they disappointed you. The question is why you're still thinking about it. Why you're still giving them real estate in your mind. Why you're still letting someone who proved they don't deserve your trust continue to occupy your thoughts, your energy, your emotional bandwidth. This is where disappointment becomes self-inflicted suffering. The event is over. They showed you who they are. They made their choice. But you're keeping it alive. You're replaying it. You're analyzing it. You're dissecting every detail, trying to find the moment where it went wrong, trying to figure out what you could have done differently. And in doing so, you're giving them power they no longer deserve. Marcus Aurelius wrote, The mind gives things their quality, so make sure you give it good things to dwell on. Every minute you spend thinking about people who disappointed you is a minute stolen from building something better. Every ounce of mental energy you dedicate to parsing their motives is energy you're not investing in your own growth. Every emotional cycle you spend on them is a cycle wasted on someone who's already proven they're not worth it. You cannot change what happened. You cannot rewind time and make different choices. You cannot make them into who you needed them to be. The only thing you control is what you do next, and what you do next starts with what you think and is. Extra, because your thoughts shape your emotions shape your actions, and your actions shape your reality. Right now, your thoughts are trapped in a loop. The same scenes, the same conversations, the same moments of betrayal playing over and over like a broken record. This isn't healing. This isn't processing. This is rumination. And rumination is poison. It doesn't lead to insight. It leads to obsession. It doesn't lead to resolution. It leads to resentment. It doesn't make you stronger. It makes you stuck. You need to break the cycle, not by suppressing the thoughts, not by pretending they don't exist, but by redirecting your focus to what actually matters. When the thought comes, and it will come, you acknowledge it. This happened. They disappointed me. That's reality. And then you immediately ask, what am I building today? Where am I directing my energy? What deserves my attention right now? This isn't toxic positivity. This isn't pretending the disappointment doesn't matter. This is choosing consciously where you place your focus, because wherever you place your focus expands. If you focus on the betrayal, it grows larger, consuming more of your mental space. If you focus on your response, your growth, your next steps, those grow larger instead. Epictetus taught that between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space lies your power. Someone disappoints you. That's the stimulus. You can't control that. But your response, how you interpret it, what meaning you assign to it, what you do with it, that's entirely within your control. And that's where your power lives. Most men give away this power without realizing it. They let the disappointment dictate their emotional state. They let the person who hurt them control their peace. They let the past event determine their present mood. They're reactive instead of responsive. They're being acted upon instead of acting. They're victims instead of agents. But you're not a victim. You're a man who experienced disappointment. Those are two very different things. A victim is powerless, passive, defined by what happened to them. A man who experienced disappointment is someone who encountered adversity, learned from it, and moved forward stronger. The event is the same. The interpretation is completely different. This shift in interpretation changes everything. When you see yourself as a victim, you're stuck. You're waiting for justice, for apologies, for them to realize what they've lost, for karma to catch up with them. You're outsourcing your peace to external circumstances you can't control. And you'll wait forever. Because most of the time that justice never comes. People don't realize what they've lost. Karma works on its own timeline, and you're left holding your disappointment, waiting for something outside yourself to make it better. But when you see yourself as a man who experienced disappointment and chose to grow from it, you're free. You're not waiting for anything. You're not dependent on their realization or regret. You're taking the lesson, extracting the value, and moving forward. Your peace isn't conditional on their awareness. Your strength isn't dependent on their change. You're sovereign over your own emotional state. This sovereignty is what the Stoics spent their lives cultivating, not the absence of feeling, not the suppression of emotion, but the mastery of response. They felt disappointment, anger, hurt just like anyone else. The difference is, they didn't let those feelings dictate their actions. They didn't let temporary emotions become permanent states. They felt fully, acknowledged honestly, and then chose consciously what came next. Seneca wrote extensively about anger. He understood its seductive power. Anger feels like strength. It feels like power. It feels like you're doing something. But anger without action is just noise. It's energy burning inside you, consuming you, weakening you. Righteous anger at betrayal can motivate you to set boundaries, to remove toxic people from your life, to choose better moving forward. but chronic anger at disappointment just makes you bitter. There's a window where anger is useful. Use it. Feel it fully. Let it show you what matters, what lines were crossed, what standards you need to enforce. And then release it. Not for them. For you. Because carrying anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. They've moved on. They're living their life. And you're still here, burning from the inside out, letting them occupy space in your mind they no longer deserve. The ultimate revenge against someone who disappointed you isn't making them regret it. It's building a life so full, so rich, so aligned with your values that you forget they exist. It's becoming so focused on your mission, your growth, your people who actually show up, that they become irrelevant. Not through forced forgetting, through genuine disinterest. They prove they don't belong in your life, so they no longer get any of your mental or emotional real estate. This requires discipline, real discipline, not physical discipline like going to the gym or waking up early. Mental discipline, the discipline to catch your thoughts when they spiral toward resentment and redirect them toward growth. The discipline to feel the anger without feeding it. The discipline to acknowledge the hurt without dwelling in it. The discipline to remember the lesson without replaying the betrayal. Your mind is like a garden. What you water grows. What you starve dies. If you keep watering thoughts of betrayal, resentment, anger, and disappointment, those grow. They take over. They choke out everything else. But if you water thoughts of growth, purpose, standards, and forward momentum, those grow instead. The weeds of resentment still try to sprout, but they're weak. They don't get the energy they need. Eventually, they wither. This is active work, every day, multiple times a day, catching yourself when you drift into rumination, redirecting, refocusing, choosing again. It's not easy, it's not fast, but it's the only way forward, because you cannot heal what you keep reopening. You cannot move past what you keep reliving. You cannot build new things while you're still trapped in old pain. This is what it means to be stoic, not to be unfeeling, but to be unshaken, to feel everything fully and still maintain your course, to acknowledge pain without being controlled by it, to learn from betrayal without being defined by it, to experience disappointment without becoming disappointed. You're building something here, not just recovery from this particular disappointment, but a framework for handling all future disappointments, because they will come. Different people, different circumstances, same fundamental challenge, and each time you'll be more prepared, more discerning, more resilient, not because you're harder, but because you're clearer. The man who's never been disappointed is untested. The man who's been disappointed and broken by it is weak. But the man who's been disappointed and grew from it, who learned to discern, who developed sovereignty over his emotional state, who chose purpose over bitterness, that man is dangerous in the best way. He cannot be manipulated. He cannot be blindsided. He cannot be kept down. You're becoming that man, not overnight, not through a single epiphany, through daily choice, and through catching yourself mid-rumination and redirecting, through feeling the anger without acting from it, through acknowledging the hurt without dwelling in it, through taking the lesson and leaving the bitterness behind. The disappointment happened. Accept it. The person showed you who they are. Believe them. The relationship ended or changed. Grieve it, and then move forward, not forgetting, but no longer fixating, not pretending it didn't matter, but no longer letting it matter more than what you're building now. Your future isn't with people who disappointed you. Your future is with people who haven't even entered your life yet, people who will prove themselves, people who will show up, people who will be worthy of your trust because they'll earn it through consistent action over time. Those people are coming, but you won't recognize them if you're still looking backwards. You won't have space for them if you're still holding space for people who prove they don't belong there. Let go, not dramatically, not performatively, quietly, firmly, completely. They had their chance. They made their choice. Now you make yours. You choose to build. You choose to grow. You choose to become someone for whom disappointment is just a teacher, not a life sentence. Chapter 4. You think the worst part about being disappointed is the loneliness, and you're right. After someone lets you down, especially someone you thought would be there, The silence is deafening. You realize how few people actually showed up, how many relationships were transactional, how much of what you thought was connection was actually just convenience. You look around and see couples, friend groups, families that seem solid. You wonder what they have that you don't. You wonder if you're fundamentally broken, fundamentally unable to build the kind of bonds that last. You wonder if trust is just a fairy tale for people who haven't been burned enough times yet. And then the dangerous thought creeps in. Maybe I should just accept that I'm alone. Maybe expecting anything from anyone is the mistake. Maybe self-reliance means complete isolation. This is the critical moment. This is where men make the choice that defines the next chapter of their life. Some men choose isolation. They build walls so high that nothing can hurt them and nothing good can reach them either. They become cold, cynical, emotionally unavailable. They wear their independence like armor, but underneath, they're just afraid. Afraid of being hurt again, afraid of trusting again, afraid of being disappointed again. Other men go the opposite direction. They become desperate for connection. They lower their standards because being with someone, anyone, feels better than being alone. They tolerate disrespect, betrayal, inconsistency because they're terrified of the alternative. They become clingy, needy, afraid to enforce boundaries because they might lose the few people still around. Both paths are prisons. Both are reactions to fear. Both give away your power. There's a third path. It's narrower, it's harder, but it's the only one that leads to actual strength. This path requires you to be alone, without being lonely, to be selective without being closed off, to be self-reliant without being isolated, to need no one while still valuing the rare few who prove themselves worthy. Marcus Aurelius understood this balance perfectly. He was the most powerful man in the world, surrounded by thousands of people, yet he wrote constantly about the loneliness of his position, the burden of knowing that most people around him wanted something from him, not a genuine relationship with him, the weight of understanding that power attracts sycophants and repels truth-tellers. But he didn't close himself off. He continued to build relationships. He continued to trust carefully. He continued to invest in people who proved themselves. He just didn't need them in a way that made him vulnerable. His center was his own philosophy, his own principles, his own commitment to virtue. People could add to his life or subtract from it, but they couldn't define it. This is what you're learning to build, a foundation so solid that other people are additions, not necessities. Relationships become enhancements to an already complete life rather than attempts to fill a void. When you need no one, you can choose everyone you let in. And that choice, made from strength rather than desperation, changes everything. Being alone is different from being lonely. Alone is a circumstance. Lonely is a state of mind. You can be alone and completely at peace, enjoying your own company, building your life according to your values. Or you can be surrounded by people and feel profoundly lonely because none of them really see you, really know you, really care beyond what you can do for them. Most men mistake motion for connection. They fill their lives with acquaintances, surface-level friendships, relationships that exist only in good times. They think having a full social calendar means they're not alone. Boos. And when crisis hits, when they really need someone, the calendar empties. The contacts don't answer. The friends disappear. And they realize they've been lonely the entire time, just distracted enough not to notice. Real connection is rare. Genuine relationships where both people show up consistently, where loyalty isn't conditional, where support flows both ways. These are exceptions, not rules. Most relationships are transactional. People stay around as long as it benefits them. As long as you're providing value, entertainment, status, something they want. The moment the cost outweighs the benefit, they're gone. This isn't cynicism. This is reality. And understanding reality is the first step to operating effectively within it. When you understand that most relationships are transactional, you stop being surprised when people disappoint you. You stop taking it personally. You simply recognize it as the natural order of things, People operate from self-interest, including you. The question isn't whether relationships are transactional, it's whether the transaction is fair and whether both parties are honest about what they're offering and what they expect in return. The men who disappoint you aren't betraying you. They're just revealing that the transaction doesn't work for them anymore. Maybe you stopped providing what they wanted. Maybe they found a better offer elsewhere. Maybe the cost of maintaining the relationship became too high. Whatever the reason, they're choosing to exit. That's their right. Just as it's your right to exit relationships that don't serve you. The pain comes from expecting something different. From believing loyalty is a given rather than something rare and earned. From thinking that if you showed up for them, they'd show up for you. But that's not how most people operate. Most people have short memories. They remember recent slights more than historical support. They prioritize their immediate needs over long-term relationships. They'll promise forever and delete until it's inconvenient. Knowing this doesn't mean you stop building relationships. It means you build them with eyes open. You give people opportunities to prove themselves, but you don't give them unconditional trust before they've earned it. You observe actions over time, looking for patterns of consistency. You watch how they handle adversity, conflict, and inconvenience. And based on what you observe, you make informed decisions about how much access they get to you, your resources, your time, your energy. This is where the concept of concentric circles comes in. Imagine your life as a series of circles expanding outward from your center. At the very center is you. Your principles, your mission, your non-negotiables. This is sacred space, inviolable. No one else occupies this space. This is where you generate your own worth, your own purpose, your own sense of self. The next circle outward is your inner circle. This is extremely small, maybe 3 to 5 people maximum. These are people who've proven themselves over years, not months, who've shown up in crisis, who've maintained consistency, who've demonstrated that their loyalty isn't conditional on your success or failure. These people have earned deep access to you. They get your vulnerability, your trust, your commitment. The next circle is your broader circle. These are good people, reliable people, but they haven't earned the deep access of your inner circle. They're friends, colleagues, family members you get along with. You care about them. You'd help them if they needed it, but you don't rely on them for deep emotional support or expect them to show up in crisis. They occupy a pleasant but protected space in your life. Beyond that is everyone else. Acquaintances, casual contacts, people you interact with but don't invest in. They're fine, they're pleasant, but they're not close, and that's appropriate. Not everyone deserves closeness. Not everyone has earned it. The mistake most men make is giving too many people access to inner circles before they've proven they belong there. They meet someone, feel a connection, and immediately treat them like a close friend. They share vulnerabilities, offer deep trust, make themselves available in ways that should be reserved for people who've earned that level of access. And then when that person disappoints them, they feel devastated. Not because the person was particularly close or important, but because they gave them access they hadn't earned. They made them important before the person proved they deserved to be. This is why you need to be slow to trust and quick to remove access. When someone shows you through repeated actions that they're unreliable, disloyal, or selfish, you don't keep them in your inner circle hoping they'll change. You move them outward. Maybe they stay in your broader circle. Maybe they become acquaintances. Maybe they leave your life entirely. The specific outcome doesn't matter. What matters is that you protect your inner circles fiercely. Your inner circle isn't just about who you let in. It's about who you become when you're in it. If your inner circle is full of people who drain you, disappoint you, or demand more than they give, you'll become resentful, exhausted, and guarded. But if your inner circle is full of people who challenge you, support you, and maintain reciprocity, you'll become stronger, clearer, and more open. This is why quality matters infinitely more than quantity. One genuine friend who shows up consistently is worth more than 100 acquaintances who disappear when things get hard. One family member who maintains integrity is worth more than a dozen who only show up for celebrations and disappear for crises. One relationship built on mutual respect and honest communication is worth more than a lifetime of surface-level connections. But here's the hard part. Building quality relationships requires you to be a quality person. You cannot expect others to show up for you if you don't show up for yourself. You cannot expect loyalty from others if you're not loyal to your own principles. You cannot expect honesty from others if you're not honest with yourself. This is where the work really begins, not in finding better people, in becoming better yourself, in developing the kind of character that attracts high-quality relationships, in embodying the standards you want others to meet. What does that look like practically? It means keeping your word, especially to yourself. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. When you commit to a principle, you follow through even when it's inconvenient. When you set a boundary, you enforce it consistently. You become someone whose word means something because you've proven through repeated action that you're reliable. It means showing up for others without keeping score. When someone in your inner circle needs help, you help. Not because you expect something in return, not because you're building obligation, but because that's who you are, that's the standard you hold. And over time this creates reciprocity, not forced or demanded, but natural. People who receive genuine support and care want to give it back, and the ones who don't reveal themselves quickly, allowing you to adjust their placement in your life accordingly. It means being honest, even when it's uncomfortable. Most relationships are built on pleasant lies and careful omissions. Nobody says what they really think. Nobody challenges anyone. Nobody risks conflict. And because of this, most relationships stay shallow. Real depth requires real honesty. Being willing to tell someone something they don't want to hear because it's true and it will help them. Being willing to risk the relationship to maintain integrity. It means having standards and enforcing them without apology. You don't tolerate disrespect. You don't accept betrayal. You don't make excuses for people's bad behavior. When someone crosses a line, you address it immediately and clearly. And if they can't or won't respect your boundaries, you remove their access, not angrily, not dramatically, but firmly and finally. This level of self-respect and standard enforcement does something interesting. It repels low-quality people and attracts high-quality ones. The people who are looking for someone to manipulate, drain, or take advantage of will sense your boundaries and move on to easier targets. But the people who are looking for genuine, reciprocal, high-integrity relationships will recognize a kindred spirit. You won't have many friends when you operate this way. You won't have a large social circle or a full calendar. But the relationships you do have will be real, built on mutual respect, maintained through consistent action, deepened over time through shared experience and proven loyalty. And most importantly, you won't be lonely. Because loneliness isn't about being alone. It's about feeling unseen, unknown, unvalued. When you have even one relationship that's genuine, where someone really sees you, really knows you, really values you for who you are rather than what you provide, that ends loneliness. Not the circumstance of being alone, but the state of feeling lonely. And even if you don't have that yet, even if you're in a season where you're genuinely alone while you're rebuilding and raising your standards, you can still be free from loneliness because you can see yourself, know yourself, value yourself. The relationship you have with yourself is the foundation for every other relationship in your life. If that foundation is solid, everything else is manageable. If it's broken, nothing else can fix it. So this work isn't out there. It's in here. It's becoming someone you respect, someone you'd want to be friends with, someone who embodies the qualities you're looking for in others. It's building a life you don't need to escape from, relationships you don't need to hide from, a character you don't need to apologize for. Do this, and the right people will find you. Not instantly, not easily, but eventually. And when they do, you'll recognize them, because they'll be doing the same work you're doing. They'll have the same standards you have. They'll value the same things you value. And together, you'll build something rare. A relationship that actually lasts because it's built on reality, not fantasy. on demonstrated character, not promised potential, on mutual respect, not mutual need. Until then, walk alone without apology. Build yourself without distraction. Maintain your standards without compromise. The right people are coming, but they're looking for someone who's already whole, already clear, already strong. Become that man, and everything else will follow. Chapter 5. You've made it this far. You've felt the disappointment. You've done the work of discernment. You've built boundaries and raised standards. You've learned to walk alone without being lonely. And now you stand at the edge of something new, the life you're building on the other side of disappointment. This is where most stories about overcoming adversity end. The hero learns their lesson, sets new boundaries, and walks off into the sunset stronger and wiser. But that's not where the real work lives. The real work lives in maintenance, in consistency, in continuing to embody these principles when life gets comfortable again, when new people enter your life, when old patterns try to reassert themselves. Because here's what nobody tells you about growth. It's not linear. You don't learn a lesson once and have it mastered forever. You learn it, apply it, succeed for a while, then find yourself tested again in a different context. The disappointments keep coming. Different faces, different circumstances, same fundamental challenge, and each time you get to choose who you are. The Stoics understood this. They didn't see philosophy as something you learn once. They saw it as something you practice daily. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations not for publication but for himself. Reminders, reinforcements, recalibrations. Because even an emperor, even a philosopher, even a man who'd mastered himself needed constant reminding of what mattered and who he wanted to be. You need the same, not because you're weak, but because you're human. And humans forget. They slip back into old patterns. They make exceptions that become habits. They relax standards that should remain firm. Without constant practice, constant awareness, constant recommitment, the lessons you've learned fade. The boundaries you've built erode. The standards you've set lower. So how do you maintain what you've built? How do you ensure that this transformation isn't temporary but permanent? How do you become someone for whom these principles are natural, automatic, intrinsic? First, you make it daily practice. Not grand gestures, not occasional efforts when you remember. Daily, deliberate, consistent practice. This means waking up and consciously choosing your mindset. Asking yourself, what matters today? Where am I directing my energy? What standards am I maintaining? It means checking yourself throughout the day. When disappointment arises, and it will, catching yourself before you spiral. When someone shows signs of unreliability, addressing it immediately instead of making excuses. When you feel the pull toward old patterns, people-pleasing, lowering boundaries, recognizing it, and consciously choosing differently. It means ending each day with reflection. What went well? Where did I maintain my standards? Where did I slip? What do I need to remember tomorrow? This isn't about perfection. It's about awareness. About staying conscious instead of falling back into autopilot. Second, you build rituals that reinforce who you're becoming. Rituals aren't superstition. They're deliberate practices that wire your brain toward specific outcomes. The morning routine that starts your day with purpose, the evening reflection that processes the day, the weekly review that ensures you're still on track. These aren't optional extras. They're how you maintain clarity in a world designed to distract you. Maybe your ritual is physical training, the discipline of showing up, pushing through resistance, honoring your commitment to yourself even when you don't feel like it. This builds more than muscle. It builds the character trait of following through regardless of how you feel. Maybe your ritual is solitude, time alone with your thoughts, without distractions, without noise. Time to think clearly about who you are, who you're becoming, what matters. This builds the capacity for independent thought and prevents you from being swayed by social pressure or popular opinion. Maybe your ritual is reading, not mindless consumption, but deliberate study of philosophy, biography, history, learning from those who've walked this path before you. Understanding that your struggles aren't unique, that men throughout history have faced disappointment and built themselves stronger. Whatever your rituals are, they need to be consistent, non-negotiable. The days you don't feel like doing them are the days you need them most, because those are the days when old patterns try to reassert themselves, the days when you're tempted to lower standards, make excuses, slip back into comfort. Your rituals are what keep you anchored to who you're becoming instead of who you were. Third, you curate your environment ruthlessly. You cannot maintain high standards while surrounded by low standards. You cannot embody integrity while immersed in dishonesty. You cannot build strength while surrounded by weakness. Your environment shapes you, whether you acknowledge it or not. This means evaluating everything: the media you consume, the people you spend time with, the spaces you occupy, the conversations you engage in. Are they reinforcing who you want to become or pulling you back toward who you were? If you're surrounded by people who make excuses, you'll make excuses. If you're surrounded by people who tolerate disrespect, you'll tolerate disrespect. If you're surrounded by people who settle for mediocrity, you'll settle for mediocrity. This isn't moral judgment. It's psychological reality. Humans are social creatures. We calibrate to our environment. And if your environment is pulling you down, no amount of willpower will keep you up indefinitely. So you make hard choices. You distance yourself from people who drag you backward, even if they're pleasant company. You stop consuming content that feeds weakness, even if it's entertaining. You create space for what builds you up and eliminate what tears you down. This isn't selfish. It's survival. It's recognizing that you're in a battle for who you become, and every environmental factor is either an ally or an enemy. Fourth, you find your mission, not your job, not your hobby, your mission. The thing that matters more than comfort, more than approval, more than temporary pleasure. The thing you do even if no one ever acknowledged it. The thing that gives your life meaning beyond yourself. For some men, it's building something. A business, a project, a skill developed to mastery. For others, it's serving something. A cause they believe in, people they're committed to helping, a change they want to see in the world. For others still, it's creating something. Art, writing, craftsmanship, something that expresses their unique perspective. The specific mission doesn't matter. What matters is having one, because without a mission, life becomes about avoiding pain and seeking pleasure. About reacting to circumstances instead of creating them. About drifting instead of driving. And when disappointment comes, as it always does, you have nothing to anchor to, nothing larger than the immediate pain, nothing that makes the struggle worthwhile. But with a mission, disappointment becomes context. It's still real, it still hurts. But it's not the main story. The main story is what you're building, what you're becoming, where you're going. Disappointment is just weather, sometimes stormy, sometimes clear, but always temporary. Your mission is the destination, and as long as you keep moving toward it, the wheel. That doesn't define the journey. Fifth, you accept that you'll be tested, repeatedly, constantly, forever. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. The moment you think you've arrived, the moment you think you've mastered these principles and no longer need to practice them, that's the moment you're most vulnerable. New people will enter your life. Some will be exactly what they appear. Others will wear masks skillfully crafted to bypass your defenses. You'll face the same choice you've faced before: trust quickly or discern carefully. And if you've gotten comfortable, if you've relaxed your vigilance, you'll make mistakes. Old patterns will resurface. The people-pleasing, the boundary-blurring, the excuse-making. Not because you're weak, but because you're human, and old patterns have deep roots. They'll disguise themselves as compassion, flexibility, giving people chances, and if you're not careful, you'll find yourself right back where you started. Circumstances will change. Success will bring new challenges. Failure will test your resolve. Loneliness will tempt you to lower standards. New relationships will challenge your boundaries. Each change is a test of whether you've truly internalized these principles or just performed them temporarily. But here's the advantage you have now that you didn't have before. Experience. You've been disappointed before. You've felt the pain of betrayal. You've lived through the aftermath. And you've done the work of rebuilding stronger. So when it happens again, and it will, you'll recognize it faster. You'll respond more effectively. You'll recover more quickly. The goal isn't to never be disappointed again. That's impossible. The goal is to become someone for whom disappointment is informative rather than destructive. Someone who can acknowledge hurt without being consumed by it. Someone who can lose people without losing themselves. This is the final transformative. From someone who was devastated by disappointment to someone who expected it. From someone who was broken by betrayal to someone who was strengthened by it. From someone who needed people to be different to someone who accepted people as they are and chose accordingly. You're not the same man who started this journey. You've stripped away illusions. You've built boundaries. You've raised standards. You've learned to walk alone. You've found your mission. You've become someone who cannot be easily shaken because your foundation isn't built on other people's reliability. It's built on your own principles. This doesn't mean you're closed off or cold or cynical. It means you're clear. You know what you value. You know what you tolerate. You know what you deserve. And you enforce those standards consistently, calmly, without apology. When someone disappoints you now, you don't spiral. You observe. You assess. You decide. Are they in crisis and acting out of character? Give them space and see if they return to form. Are they revealing their true character? Adjust their place in your life accordingly. Are they consistently unreliable? Remove them entirely. The decision is no longer emotional. It's practical. It's information-based. It's rooted in reality rather than hope. And because of this, it's more effective. You're not trying to change people. You're not trying to fix relationships that are fundamentally broken. You're simply recognizing what is and responding appropriately. This is power, real power, not power over others, power over yourself, power to choose your response regardless of circumstances, power to maintain your standards regardless of social pressure, power to walk away from what doesn't serve you regardless of how comfortable or familiar it is. And this power attracts a different quality of person, because people can sense it. They can sense that you not desperate, that you're not compromising, that you have standards and you enforce them. The manipulators and users sense this and move on to easier targets. But the high-quality people, the ones doing their own work, the ones who've built their own standards, they recognize a kindred spirit. You won't build a large circle this way, but you'll build a real one. People who've earned their place through demonstrated character. People who show up not because they need something, but because they value the relationship. People who maintain consistency not out of obligation, but out of integrity. And even if you don't find those people immediately, even if you're alone for a season while you're building and becoming, you're no longer afraid of that, because you've learned the most important lesson of all. You don't need anyone. You choose people. You value people. You invest in people who prove themselves worthy. But your peace, your purpose, your sense of self, these don't depend on anyone showing up or staying or proving reliable. You've become sovereign, master of your own emotional state, captain of your own ship, architect of your own life. Disappointment still happens, but it no longer derails you. It informs you, refines you, strengthens you. This is what lies on the other side of disappointment. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of power. Not the guarantee of loyalty from others, but the certainty of loyalty to yourself. Not the perfect relationship or friendship or life, but the perfect response to imperfect circumstances. You've walked through fire and emerged tempered. You've been broken and rebuilt stronger. You've learned the hard lessons that most men avoid their entire lives, and because of this, you're rare, You're valuable. You're someone who cannot be easily shaken, easily manipulated, easily broken. The disappointments of your past weren't punishments. They were preparation. Preparation for this moment, for this version of you, for the life you're building now on foundations that cannot be shaken by other people's weakness or inconsistency or betrayal. Walk forward, head high, standards firm, boundaries clear, mission focused. You know who you are. You know what you value. You know what you deserve, and you'll never again compromise those things for the comfort of company that doesn't respect them. This is strength. This is wisdom. This is what it means to stay strong when people disappoint you. Not by hardening your heart, but by clarifying your mind. Not by closing yourself off, but by opening yourself only to what's worthy. Not by expecting nothing from anyone, but by expecting everything from yourself. You are the foundation. You are the standard. You are the one who shows up, keeps your word, maintains integrity, enforces boundaries, and builds something worth building. And anyone who wants access to that must prove themselves worthy through demonstrated action over time. No exceptions, no excuses, no compromise. This is who you are now. This is who you're becoming. And disappointment, inevitable as it is, will never again have the power to break you, because you've learned the secret. The only person who can break you is you, and you've decided that's not happening. Walk on.